sister lied that I stole her ring, then family abandoned me, but 3 years later it showed up in the garbage disposal. Family is supposed to be the people who know you best, the ones who believe in you, trust you, and stand by your side. But for me, my family became my greatest betrayers, and all it took was one lie to destroy everything. I grew up in a small town with my parents and my older sister, Gemma. She was always the golden child, straight A student, the one teachers adored, the one who could do no wrong. And me? I was just the younger brother in her shadow. I wasn't a troublemaker, but compared to Gemma, I was always the one who wasn't enough. And that was fine, until the day she turned my entire family against me. Gemma got engaged to her boyfriend, Tom, a few years ago. Tom came from a wealthy family. Tom was a lawyer. Tom was everything my parents wanted in a son. And when he proposed, it was with a diamond ring that had been in his family for generations. The engagement party was a big deal. My parents invited half the town. And me? I was there, standing at the edges, watching as everyone celebrated her perfect life. I didn't mind. I had accepted my place in the family a long time ago. But what I didn't know was that everything was about to come crashing down. A few weeks after the engagement, I was home alone when Gemma and my mom came back from shopping. They were laughing, talking about wedding plans. Everything was normal, until an hour later. I heard Gemma scream. I ran downstairs to find her frantic. "Where is it?" she yelled. "Where is my ring?" She pointed at the kitchen counter. "I took it off when I was washing dishes. And now it's gone." I blinked, confused. "I don't know. I didn't touch it." But she wasn't listening. She was looking right at me. "You were the only one home. You've always been jealous of me. You probably took it so you could sell it and move out." And then, my parents came home, and they believed her. I pleaded with them. "I didn't steal it. I don't know where it is. Why would I do something like that?" But my mother was already crying. "How could you do this to your own sister?" And my father? He just stared at me with disappointment. Then, they searched my room. They tore through my belongings. They dumped out my drawers. They found the cash I had been saving from my part-time job. And Gemma? See, he already sold it. That's why he has money. I explained. I told them over and over that I had been saving for months. But they didn't care, because in their minds, I was already guilty. For the next week, my life was a nightmare. They grilled me nonstop. They demanded I return the ring. They threatened to call the police. I was terrified. My sister looked at me like I was nothing. My parents refused to listen. I had nowhere to turn. And then, my father sat me down. "You have to leave." I stared at him. "What? You've shamed this family enough. We can't trust you anymore." "Dad, I didn't do anything." "Pack your things. You have 2 days." And just like that, I was homeless, because my family had decided that a lie was worth more than me. I packed my things in a single duffel bag. I had no plan, no home, no money, except for the little I had saved. And as I stepped outside, I looked up at Gemma's window. She was watching me, and for a split second, I thought I saw doubt in her eyes. Like maybe, just maybe, she knew she was wrong. But she turned away, and that was the moment I knew. I didn't have a family anymore. I used to think that family was forever, that no matter what happened, blood was thicker than water. But now, I was alone, because my family decided that a lie was more important than me. And I was about to prove that I never needed them in the first place. I left with nothing but a duffel bag and the little cash I had saved. No apartment, no job, no one to turn to. And my parents didn't even look back. I spent my first night on a park bench. I couldn't sleep, not because of the cold, but because of the rage boiling inside me. How could they do this to me? How could they throw me away so easily? But as the sun rose, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this break me. I was going to survive. No, I was going to thrive. And one day, they would regret everything. Starting over was brutal. I found a cheap, run-down hostel to sleep in. I worked any job I could find. I lived on instant noodles and whatever I could afford. But every single day, I worked harder. I saved every penny. And slowly, I started to build a life without them. I got a steady job. I found a small apartment. I stopped feeling like a victim. And my family, they never reached out. Not once. Not even to see if I was alive. And that told me everything I needed to know. Months passed. Then, one night, I got a text from an old friend. "Dude, something crazy happened. You're not gonna believe it." I frowned. "What?" Then he sent me a link. I clicked, and my jaw dropped. Because right there, on my screen, was a news article. Local woman accused of insurance fraud, engagement ring miraculously found. And the name in the article? Gemma. I read the article twice, then 3 times. Because it was so insane, I could barely believe it. Turns out, Gemma had found her engagement ring and filed an insurance claim for it. But the company did an investigation, and guess what? They caught her lying. She had tried to cash in on the lost ring, and in the process, exposed the fact that she had framed me. 2 days later, I got a call from a familiar number. Mom. For the first time in over a year, I let it ring. Then, I answered. Hello. There was a pause, then a shaky voice. Sweetheart, it's Mom. We need to talk. I smiled. Because now the power was mine, and I was going to make them feel every ounce of pain they put me through. I stared at my phone. For the first time in over a year, my mother was calling me, not to check if I was alive. Not because she missed me, not because she finally realized her mistake, but because Gemma had been exposed. And now, she wanted me to fix it. I took a deep breath and answered. Hello. There was a pause, then a shaky voice. Sweetheart, it's Mom. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, feeling nothing. Oh, now you want to talk? She sighed. Please, let's not do this. You know we love you. I laughed. Do I? Because the last time we spoke, you were throwing me out like garbage. There was silence. Then, we made a mistake. I smirked. No, Mom. You made a choice. And now, you're just facing the consequences. She launched into an explanation. Gemma was under a lot of stress. She made a mistake. We didn't know what to believe at the time. I stayed silent, waiting. Then, but you're still our son. Can't we put this behind us? I exhaled slowly, because that's when I realized. They weren't really sorry. They just wanted to clean up the mess Gemma made. And now, they needed me to play along. But I wasn't interested. Mom, let me ask you something. What? If Gemma had never been caught, would you have ever called me? Silence. Then, of course we would, sweetie. I cut her off. No, you wouldn't have. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is that you destroyed my life over a lie and never once cared if I survived. We didn't know. You didn't want to know. You had your perfect daughter, and I was just the disposable one. She started crying. But for the first time, I didn't care. Mom, I said calmly, I don't need you anymore. She gasped. Please, don't say that. You made me homeless. You treated me like a criminal. And now you want to pretend we can be a happy family again. But we're your parents. No, you were my biggest mistake. And then, I hung up. Because this time, I had the final say. That call was the last time I ever spoke to my mother. They tried reaching out again. They sent messages. They tried to fix things. But the truth? I was done with them. Because some betrayals aren't forgivable. And now, they had to live with the pain of losing me forever. And I had never felt freer. I had spent my entire life begging for their love. Begging to be seen, heard, believed. But now, they were the ones begging for me. And I was finally done. After that final call with my mother, the desperation started. Text after text, voicemail after voicemail. Relatives reaching out, saying my parents missed me. Even my dad, who barely spoke before, sent me a message. Dad, we need to move forward as a family. We made a mistake, but we're still your parents. I stared at the screen, completely unmoved. Because now, I finally saw the truth. They didn't miss me. They missed having control over me. They missed having someone to dump their guilt onto. And that wasn't my problem anymore. A few weeks later, I got a message from my aunt. Your mom isn't doing well. She's crying all the time. Can't you just talk to her? I sighed. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't falling for the guilt trip. I sent one final response. She wasn't crying when she kicked me out. She can live with the consequences. And then, I blocked the number. Because their pain didn't erase mine. And their guilt wasn't my burden to carry. Now that Gemma's fraud had been exposed. Her perfect life was falling apart. Tom's family was furious. Their engagement was in shambles. She was dealing with legal consequences. And guess what? She had no one left to defend her. The same parents who threw me away were now watching their golden child crumble. And that was the karma I had been waiting for. After months of silence, I got one last call. Dad, I answered out of curiosity. Son. His voice was tired, defeated. Your mother and I just want to see you. Can we start over? I closed my eyes. Because this was the moment I had waited for. Dad, I said quietly, I already started over. Just without you. And then, I hung up. Because the only thing I owed them was the silence they gave me when I needed them most. Since then, I haven't spoken to them. No calls. No texts. No family drama. Just peace. And honestly, I have never been happier. Because the truth is I never needed them. I was never the problem. And now, I am completely free. And them? They're left drowning in the mess they created. Because they made their choice. And I made mine. For years, I believed I needed my family. That no matter how badly they treated me, I had to forgive them. But now, I saw the truth. They didn't want me back. They just didn't want to live with the consequences. And that wasn't my problem anymore. Because while I was building a new life, they were drowning in the mess they created. And I was never coming to save them. A few months passed. No response from me. No attempts to reconnect. No forgiveness. And suddenly, my family started panicking. I got a message from my cousin. "Hey, your mom is really upset. She says the family isn't the same without you." I smirked. Because wasn't that exactly what they wanted? They threw me away like I was nothing. And now, they had to live with what they did. It wasn't just my parents feeling the pressure. Gemma's life was falling apart even more. After her fraud case, Tom left her. The engagement was off. His family cut all ties. She lost the perfect life she built on lies. And now, for the first time in her life, she had no one to cover for her. My parents couldn't help her. Our extended family was disgusted by what she did. And I was watching from a distance, completely unfazed. Because after everything she put me through, I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. One evening, I got an email from my mother. "We know we made a mistake. Please, just meet us once. We want to make things right." I stared at the screen. Because if this had come a year ago, I might have believed it. I might have given them another chance. But now, I knew exactly what this was. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were just sorry they had to live with the consequences. They missed their idea of me, not the real me. And that was when I knew. I was never going back. I took a deep breath and typed my response. "You made your choice. You believed a liar over your own son. You made me homeless. You never once checked if I was okay. Now, you're dealing with the consequences. And I don't feel sorry for you. I moved on. You should too." And then, I blocked their emails. I blocked their numbers. I erased them from my life completely. Because this time, they didn't get a second chance. Since then, I haven't looked back. No family drama. No more begging for their love. No more wondering if I was good enough. Because now I know. I was always enough. They just weren't the family I deserved. And the best revenge was proving that I never needed them to be happy. Because while they were stuck in their regret, for years, my family made me feel replaceable, like I was nothing to them. And now, they were realizing the hardest truth of all. I was never the problem. They just needed me there to pretend they were a perfect family. And now that I was gone, they were falling apart. And I was finally free. After my final message, I thought they'd finally leave me alone. But instead, things got worse. My cousin texted me a few weeks later. "Dude, your parents are freaking out. They really thought you'd come back." I smirked. Because they always assumed that no matter what they did, I would forgive them. They thought I'd come running back the second they pretended to be sorry. But now, I wasn't playing their game anymore. And they were lost without me. Meanwhile, Gemma was dealing with the consequences of her own actions. Tom's family cut her off completely. Her reputation was ruined. No one trusted her anymore. And the best part? Our parents weren't helping her anymore. Because now that they had no one else to blame, they had to deal with the mess she made. And suddenly, she wasn't the perfect golden child anymore. She was just a liar. And for the first time, she had to face the truth about herself. One day, I got a message from an unknown number. I already knew who it was. "Gemma, I know you hate me, but can we just talk?" I stared at the screen. Because after everything she did, she still thought I owed her a conversation. But I had nothing left to say. I deleted the message. I blocked the number. I moved on, just like she told me to. Because now, she was finally feeling what I felt. Abandoned. Alone. And without a family to save her. That was the last time my family ever reached out. Because they finally understood. They lost me for good. I wasn't coming back. And I didn't need them to be happy. And honestly, I have never felt lighter. Because walking away wasn't about punishing them. It was about choosing myself. And that was the best decision I ever made. For years, I was made to feel like I was less. Like I was the problem. Like I would never be good enough. But now, I finally understood the truth. I was never the issue. They just needed someone to blame. And without me, they had to face their own failures. And that was the best revenge of all. Months passed. I built a life without them. A career that was fully mine. Friends who actually cared about me. A future where I wasn't treated like a burden. And my family. They were stuck in the wreckage they created. My parents were still trying to fix things, but no one wanted to hear it. Gemma was struggling to pick up the pieces of her shattered reputation. And for the first time, they had to accept that I wasn't coming back, because I was finally done being their scapegoat. One night, I was out with friends when someone casually mentioned my parents. They still talk about you, you know. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, yeah, your mom still hopes you'll come to your senses and come home. I laughed, because after everything they did, they still thought I'd just forget. They still thought I'd pretend it never happened. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. They were nothing more than a lesson I had learned. And that was the real ending. Since then, I've never looked back. No calls, no messages, no second chances. And you know what? I don't miss them. Because the truth is, I never lost my family. They lost me. And now, that's a pain they'll have to live with for the rest of their lives.